Hello there, and welcome to Genre Grinder. This month, I welcome my first ever international guest, calling all the way from Belgium, co-host of Monster Island Commentaries, and my friend, Luana Saitta. Please introduce yourself.
It's really sweet that you call me your friend, Gabe.
You are my friend.
No, you're my friend too. Hi everybody. My name is Luana Saitta. As Gabe told you, I'm the co-host together with Travis Kirkland of Monster Island Commentaries, in which we, as the name perhaps made you guess, we kind of record riff tracks-esque commentaries for usually kaiju movies. We've done a lot of Godzillas, some Gameras, and occasionally we'll do special episodes, like for our birthday months, we'll do movies that are near and dear to us, or we'll do a Halloween special, which this month is going to be Q the Winged Serpent. That Larry Cohen classic.
That's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely my favorite of his movies. I like that one. Have you seen many of them?
I was going to say, I've only seen the baby movies, It's a Line trilogy. I don't know did he even direct all three of them?
I think he did. He did.
Okay, yeah, so I've seen those three. So I'm going to watch Q for the first time this weekend, and sometime next week we'll record our Halloween special about it.
Cool.
And then we've got some Patreon exclusive stuff, so you can obviously find us on Patreon as well, where we just kind of do some shorter talks. So we do Monster Island talks on random non-kaiju things, like we did one on comedy, because Travis is a big comedy geek. We did one on Star Wars, because I'm a big Star Wars nerd. Our last one was on action movies. That's kind of that's kind of my presence in the podcasting world.
And I'll try to find some good ones to link on our. When I put this live, I'll put some. We'll pick some to sample from there.
I don't recommend Godzilla '98 because it was a real disaster where both of us just started groaning and moaning like 3/4 of the movie, and oh god, we've still got 40 minutes to go.
That's one of those movies that for some reason kind of found like a new audience. I don't know if people were younger when they saw it, but it's just one I've never really been able to get much into.
I guess I was the right age when it actually came out in like 98. I was 98. I was 13. And so I guess I kind of liked it because I had never seen a Godzilla, and it's like, hey, a dinosaur movie like Jurassic Park. Okay, that's okay. But like as I rewatched it in my 20s, I was like, hey, wait a minute, this shit blows. So it's funny that people are like rediscovering it, because there's like not much to rediscover. Go rediscover Universal Soldier. That's an Emmerich that is worth rediscovering.
Yeah, my memory of that Godzilla was that it came out my senior year, and so it came out after graduation, and I had an art teacher that was just super excited for it, and I remember actually seeing it and saying, "Uh-oh." Mr. Miller's going to be very sad about this. He was like explaining it to the whole class how Godzilla is so important because you can run away from a dinosaur, but you can't run away from Godzilla. He's like explaining this to like an advanced art class of like 18-year-olds who don't give a shit. It was great. Anyway, as you might suspect, based on me inviting Luana on here and the fact that we're talking about kaiju movies, this episode. And also, I suppose if you download the episode, you saw that it's in the title that this is going to be a kaiju related episode.
Yay.
So I'm going to try my best to define this on the outset, because it's not really like a lot of genres. You can hem and haw over the definition, but the term kaiju loosely translates to strange monster in Japanese.
Yeah.
And it was kind of used after Gojira / Godzilla, as we called it in the rest of the world, which was 1954. Okay. And it came to mean specifically big monsters. Mm-hmm. So like a dinosaur and up is a kaiju. But so there's arguments is are the giant ants and them are those kaiju, and
right.
I don't know. I don't think they really are, but I'm not the judge of that necessarily, but
Well, I
guess
think that obviously it's one of those things where it's like, if you feel that it's a kaiju, then it's a
yeah.
kaiju. But I guess to me, a kaiju has this feeling of sort of helplessness that like humans can't just bomb it into oblivion.
Mm-hmm.
There's like you can just shoot King Kong, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
or the creatures from Rampage. You can just drop a wall on them and they'll be at least severely hurt.
Mm-hmm.
There's like this I guess there's to me there's this level of like beyondness to them. Like we can't quite comprehend them. I remember when I actually started this podcast with Travis, and the podcast it was actually kind of a sequel project to two books that we co-wrote based on a blog that we did together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was 2014-ish that I first started seeing all these Godzilla movies, and our perspectives were that I was the noob, and Travis had. And Travis was like, he was the longtime fan. He grew up with Kaiju, with Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with, like, after seeing Gojira, the original, I was like, hey, this is kind of one of those things like In the Mouth of Madness, not really a Lovecraft movie, but like, hey, this is a good Lovecraft movie without being based on anything. And I feel like Gojira is that too. Like, it feels like Gojira feels more like Cthulhu than King Kong.
Uh-huh.
Like he's this unknowable thing that comes from the depths, and only through great, self-destructive sacrifice can the human protagonist, at least quell him a bit, like Lovecraft protagonists tend to do so. And it's a very, it's a grim, kind of a grim and a scary movie, and so I guess that even when it gets silly, the because obviously by the mid '60s we'd gotten pretty silly. We'd ditched the Lovecraftian elements altogether. But the kaiju always seem to exist on a different plane than the humans. No doubt, of course, necessitated through like the the sets that the suit actors had to trundle through that were obviously shot in a completely different location and on a different moment in time than the human actors were caught.
Yeah.
So there's always this huge divide between the model work, the suit work, and the human scenes. Putting them together. There's not like there's no the interaction of Kong and Ann is like a big linchpin of King Kong, right? Kong is holding Ann. He's running off with her. There's a little claymation Ann in his hand often. And there is hardly ever any real human. Like, at best, there'll be, like, vehicle kaiju interaction. And that's, of course, due to technical limitations. But I think it kind of adds to that, the otherworldliness of the kaiju, to me.
Yeah, and I guess the King Kong is sort of defined by his relationship with Anne in every version of that movie. Mm-hmm. Even the newer one where they went even bigger, and there's no Anne. It's still kind of human relationship. Yeah. Well, I actually maybe other than I don't know, animated fairy tales and Star Wars movies, this is probably the first actual genre of movies I cared about as a kid. Oh. Just because I was one of those dinosaur kids.
Uh-huh. Yeah, me too.
And so anything that had a big monster in it was great. And I have really vivid memories of being a little kid and grabbing something off the shelf and taking it to my mom at the video store and her explaining that this is beta and we don't have beta and sending me back and then figuring, because apparently a lot of the Godzillas were on beta, but it wasn't just Godzilla. I could watch anything. And then that kind of went away. And then it came back into my life when I was a teenager because the Sci-Fi Network used to play them a lot. Uh-huh. And so if I was sitting around the house, I would watch them again. And then they kind of went, and then they came back again when DVDs and Blu-rays became a big deal and I started collecting them. So personally, I've seen a bazillion kaiju movies, but I've mostly only watched the Godzilla ones until very recently.
Right.
So I thought that it would be. Also, I'm trying to make sure I have as much room to continue doing podcasts forever and ever and ever. So I decided maybe we shouldn't. And also because it's such a broad category, but we shouldn't cover any Godzilla movies on this particular podcast. So I kind of gave Luana a list of non-Godzilla movies and movies that don't overlap with Godzilla, because Toho had this whole extended universe, for lack of a better word, where Mothra existed within the Godzilla universe and Rodan existed within the Godzilla. And I think even the Gargantuans might. I don't know. There's some sort of... It doesn't matter. So I just came up with a list, and the one movie I really wanted to talk about, because I hadn't seen it in a while, was released kind of in this golden era that I think most fans call the Showa era, because that was what Toho has named that era, even if they're not Toho-made products. And that is the Daimajin. Apparently this was something that was not available on video very often, but was on TV all the time. Has really great TV titles: Majin, the Monster of Terror, The Vengeance of the Monster, and apparently on some stations it was called The Devil Got Angry.
That's accurate.
Yeah, I thought that was the cutest title, and I imagine little kids on a Saturday matinee getting very excited for The Devil Got Angry. It was directed by Kimiyoshi Yasuda, who was mostly known for his Zatoichi the Blind Swordsman movies. And I could see that he made there was a yokai monsters, and yokai monsters are much smaller. They're different than kaiju monsters. They're basically possessed. They're demons and possessed objects. So there were actors in suits, but other than that, this was, I believe, the only time he ever worked on a, quote, kaiju movie.
Right.
And it was produced by, I think, is it pronounced Dai Film, who were known for Gamera, the flying spinning turtle, who was sort of the more kid-friendly alternative / ripoff of Godzilla. Probably known to a lot of people just because I think almost all the early Gamera movies had a Mystery Science Theater 3000 thing. But the point is that mostly Yasuda is known for samurai movies. And Daimajin is a samurai movie, a period piece that leads up to a kaiju movie, but is for the most part not really a kaiju movie. And I couldn't find a lot of information. I tried to do some research. I couldn't find a lot of information in English about it.
Right.
I was thinking that Daimajin was a specific lore of some kind, but I guess they made it up for the movie.
Okay.
Apparently, he is a kind warrior, and I don't remember them saying this in the movie. And either I watched it in Japanese, and this last time I watched it in English. He is a warrior named Shino, and a couple times I hear them call him Shino in the English dub, who fought some epic battle, and his spirit was locked inside this giant stone statue. And he can be summoned by people who need his help. And that's like the idea is that he's a benevolent god of some kind, but the term means giant demon god, Daimajin. And he doesn't, to me, seem like he really has, like, he seems like old school Godzilla, where he's not necessarily looking to hurt all of humanity, but he's also not too concerned with stepping on the villagers, or once he's released, he's sort of just out there killing things. So he's not exactly as benevolent as the description made him sound to me.
The that's kind of weird from like hearing all that stuff from the English dub, because like I don't think all that stuff was in the Japanese version that I
Yeah,
saw. He's just like the angry god, like, oh,
yeah,
there is an angry god on the mountain. Or
yeah.
how dare you not believe in him? I will awaken him to enact vengeance. And
Yeah,
he's almost like a Hulk, because like the big climactic set piece is like, no, don't step on the good guy.
yeah, they have to stop him from kill. Like he comes to kill the evil lord. Like I said, it's mostly a samurai movie,
Yeah.
or not even a samurai movie. There's not a lot of samurai. There's a little bit of what's the word, chambara. There's a
Yeah,
little bit of
Shambara,
chambara
yeah.
action. It's not the best action. If I was judging it as a samurai movie, I think it's really atmospheric and a pretty good kind of gothic horror movie. But it's not the best samurai movie. It just doesn't have that much samurai action. But I went in after I learned it was the blind swordsman guy. I was expecting some really. I was like, maybe I should rewatch this. It has some really intense stuff. But anyway, I think that maybe some people wouldn't like it because it's not quite a samurai movie, it's not quite a horror movie, and it's not quite a kaiju movie.
Right.
But personally, I like it because it's all those things.
Yeah, it's kind of, you know what it reminds me of? It's kind of like a Japanese Hammer horror movie, where
Yes.
it's like a really atmospheric period piece. There's a big monster climax. There's a shitty human villain that gets his comeuppance.
Yes.
And
There's a bunch of religious dogma going on.
yeah, I thought it was funny, like how like the transgressions that needed to be punished were all like, this guy going against the established order, how dare he? Like, there's even a moment at the start when he does his Sasukemono or something he's called, the bad
Yeah.
guy. He's like, someone, how dare you commit this palace coup? We took you in when you were but a mere drifter. It's like, oh, this guy isn't even an aristocrat at all, so he's bad.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That is a common thing in Hammer movies. Is tradition is actually the good thing, and that
Right.
especially the early Hammer movies.
Yeah, with you had like Peter Cushing being the badass, who was also like the the dad professor.
Yeah, yeah, who prays and all that stuff. But yeah, so I think as a horror movie, honestly, and that's to me, like, if you're going to define a kaiju movie, it's a lot of the times they actually come up on horror lists, I notice, and I suppose that a lot of the really good ones are scary. Something like the original Godzilla, or I always found, I don't necessarily think it's the greatest movie, but I found Cloverfield very scary when I saw it in theaters. And there's this sort of, like you said, it's an H.P. Lovecraft thing where you just can't do anything about it.
Right.
And I think it's something that the new Godzilla movies have done well. The just sort of scale of the disaster, because there's sort of disaster movies. Sometimes they're even war movies. I suppose this one would fit under the war movie because of the warring tribe stuff.
Yeah.
The Daimajin himself is a really cool design. After I rewatched it, I started looking to see if they made any toys or statues, and they're all, of course, $1 million jillion because all that kaiju stuff is always very expensive. But he's a really cool design. It's like he looks like a living, moving statue, and has a lot of weight to the costume he's in. And it's one of the few I can think of, other than the Frankenstein or Gargantuans, or you call them, where you can see the actor's eyes, actual eyes.
Like that felt like Daimajin was probably a suit that was one of the less shitty suits for the monster actors to act in.
He didn't have his arms secretly like holding shit up and moving. Yeah.
I always find it funny when you have quadruped kaiju, because you always see some poor actor being humiliated to be crawling around on his knees. Like, they try to shoot around it, but like Anguirus is like on his knees so often.
Yeah, you can see the knees. It was always something that was funny to me as a kid.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it just stand upright if it has knees that face that direction?
And I think, I actually think that Daimajin is one of those. Obviously, it has more kaiju cred because it's Japanese, but it's almost like because of its like more diminutive size than your usual kaiju. There's also more like human interaction. Like Godzilla doesn't necessarily stomp on humans per se, but this guy goes out to get vengeance. He
Yes.
rather awesomely impales that guy.
Yeah, he gets to try to break the statue, they stick a spike in his head, and he leaves it in for his whole rampage. And then, and at the end of his rampage, he yanks this spike from his head and jabs it into the villain, and basically crucifies him, but with just one spike.
Yeah.
There's lots of crucifixions in this movie, actually.
Yeah, actually, yeah. The prince and the captain of the guards, the good guys. Yeah.
And well, it's, speaking of religion, to me, I'm gonna guess, and again, I couldn't find a lot of information. I'm gonna guess that he was somewhat inspired by the golem, the Jewish tradition of the golem.
Right.
Because a golem is a big stone guy who's probably not that big, but very large stone guy who, with prayer, can protect the village or whatever. So he's sort of a bigger golem and an angrier golem.
When he's like before he's awakened, like his like more his non suit actor face, it actually kind of looks like the standard golem.
It's sort of placid, and it's one of those movies where there'll be stuff that I could see some viewers finding silly, but I always find cool, where they transition into the different face by the actor, and I'm doing a motion with my arm. I always do this when I'm talking. The actor actually moves his arm across his face, and they do kind of a wipe.
Yeah,
so he sort of reveals the demon face. And then once he's stomping around, like it's very violent, and it's interesting coming at the time. It's from 1966 when Japanese movies were a little ahead of the curve in terms of violence. There's a 1959 movie called The Ghost of Yasuda that is incredibly gory, and the same director made a movie about hell, and the name is escaping me right now, that just has nasty, disgusting, gory stuff that's just like way ahead of its time. Hello, this is Corrections Gabe calling in from the future. The name of the movie I was looking for there was Jigoku, directed by Nobuo Nagagawa, and he also made The Ghosts of Yatsuya. That was the one I was looking for earlier. I said the wrong name, so sorry about that. Bye. But most kaiju movies still were pretty, I mean, especially by 66, the Godzilla movies are starting to be kid-friendly, and we have the Gamera movies, and this is the Gamera studio. But yeah, it's pretty intense as far as violence goes. And I don't know if there's any other than, I mean, the new American movies make Godzilla into sort of a god character, but I was trying to think of any other kaiju that were actually flat out referred to as gods throughout, and Mothra was the only one that came to mind, because people do pray to Mothra.
I think King Caesar is referred to as a god.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Because he is an actual like lion god or something. I think there's a temple to him. But that may be it.
Yeah.
Wait. Thingy, the rainbow lizard.
That was another one I was considering watching for this particular podcast that I've never actually seen that one.
Baragon.
Yeah.
I recommend that because the human villain in that is like such a hilarious sleazebag. Like he beats up an old couple. He like the MacGuffin is like this gem. He's like this he's like a raider who wants to steal the island's gem, but then he awakens Baragon, and he just goes to like almost Coen Brothers-esque lengths to get his hands on, and then later to keep the gem, which including but not limited to beating up an old couple. It's delightful.
I mean, the human villains are it's like a zombie movie in that way, that a lot of the times in these movies the humans are the real bad guys, and the kaiju is sort of a force of nature.
Right, yeah. It's because of that divide, that practical divide where if there's no human villain or antagonist, then the humans are kind of just fucking around until the kaiju stuff is over, So they kind of need that, and since not too long into the kaiju golden age, the the aim started to be more towards kids, that's when those characters and those elements became more outsized as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Daimajin is like, he looks at people when he kills them. He kind of moves like Jason Voorhees, actually.
Oh God, yeah.
He's got that sort of determined motion to him, and there'll be parts where someone will shoot something at him, and he'll turn slowly to look at them before. There's a great part where they try to fight him off with fire, and he looks like he's covering his face because the fire's too much, but then he just sort of swings his arms out to both sides,
blows out the fire,
extinguishes it, and it's like Goku from Dragon Ball or something. Like, yeah, it's real. And I also made a note here to myself. I said prolonged torture sequence. Yeah, there's a pretty long torture, and the guy who gets tortured, the prince, has some really grotesque scars afterwards. The makeup is chunky. So yeah, it's really is sort of a horror movie.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of remarkable because this is a Daiei Studios movie, and Daiei would of course be mostly known for Gamera, and so the fact that we have here like this, not even just the violence and the grimness, but also kind of the production design, the production values. Like, it's a pretty lush looking movie. It's pretty slick looking, and that is, dear listener, not something you can generally say of Daiei movies.
Yeah. For all the joy you can get out of Gamera movies, especially the designs of the monsters, they're not the lushest movies. Excuse me. Another thing I noticed watching the dub, because I had never watched the dub, is that almost all of the actors dubbing dub spaghetti westerns.
Oh, really?
I made sure, I double checked, but yes, they are spaghetti western voices. So that was a weird disconnect for me, where I watched so many spaghetti westerns and I got really used to like the same lady. So the sort of witch or priestess is a woman who usually does evil women in either Italian horror movies or spaghetti westerns. But also, yes, speaking of the fact that that's the Daiei Studio aimed at kids most of the time, they've shot 3 of these back to back, and the second was Return of Daimajin, directed by Kenji Misumi. That one is almost the exact same movie again. If I would recommend that people watch that if they really like this one. But the third was called Wrath of Daimajin, or Daimajin Strikes Again, by Kazue Mori. And that one actually has children as the protagonists.
Okay. Have you seen that one?
Yes, and it's good. And it's almost as good as the original, I think. But it's still really dark. So it's like they tried to do a kids movie, but didn't quite embrace the there's like a silliness to a lot of these movies. And we're going to get to one in a minute here. But there's a silliness that just these particular movies just don't want to have. And I assume that's because they were shot back to back to back. I bet if there would have been more time in between, they would have changed up the formula a little more. Apparently in 2010, there was a 26 episode TV series.
Right. Yeah.
And I saw a lot of them are on YouTube with subtitles. So I was considering watching that someday when I got a little extra time.
I wonder how what that's like, because I mean it's a good concept. I like the 1966 movie, so
yeah, it's 26 episodes. Sounds like a lot.
Yeah, for that concept.
Yeah, but it could be interesting. And I saw some of the character designs, and they sort of sexied it up. I don't think it's got a lot of CG. It looked a little more on later Power Rangers kind of end of things. For all I know, it was the same studio. I guess that's something I could have looked into. But one other thing I would say about this movie is that the score is very clearly written by the guy who did the original Godzilla score.
Yeah, Akira Ifukube. Oh my God! I was like, when the movie started, I was like, wait. Did they just they just like straight up like use actual sound recordings of the Godzilla score. No, it's Ifukube just pulling a good old James Horner.
James Horner, or I can never remember, Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer basically doing the same thing for the last decade. And I was watching it with Christine, my girlfriend, and she said when the Daimajin was awakening, she said, "Is that Three Blind Mice?" And I realized, yeah, it kind of was a do 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 do. It's sort of a droning, scary version of three. The thing is, we're kind of making fun of it, but it's also really good. It's really impactful music. It helps the mood, and it kind of makes Daimajin just seem this unstoppable thing. And I just remembered there, like we're talking about how dark it is. I just remember there's another shot where he's not a, I don't remember what the villain's title is.
Asshole.
Governor. Yeah. We'll say he's mayor or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
He looks out his window. They
generally call him Lord, I guess.
Yeah, he's the Lord. Maybe he's a duke. But he looks out the window and he sees one of his guards just being pushed into the rock of the palace he's in by this giant hand, and the guy's just screaming in pain. And he's just shoving him so hard that this human body is actually going into rock. And that was a very good nightmarish image that I've never seen in any of the kaiju movie I've ever watched.
Right.
Did you have any last thoughts on this particular movie?
I was this was one of the earlier kaijus that I had never seen, and I was kind of excited for it because the concept was pretty cool. Like I don't think there's a lot of kaiju that take a mythological slant to their core concepts. So, and not just that, but this was an actual period piece. So, I was curious, and I liked it. And I think to come back to what you said earlier, it's that not quite being a kaiju movie. Like, it has a kaiju climax, but it's almost like, the shark in Jaws or something. There's a lot of talk about the Daimajin, and you hear him stomping around sometimes in the dark, but only the climax has Daimajin action. And honestly, I didn't even make the connection until talking to you just now, but I like the idea of a Hammer horror kaiju movie from the 60s. So yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. How about you, Gabe?
Yeah, I like it a lot, and I was happy to see it again. And actually, after we finished it, Christine wanted to watch the next one right away, and I was like, "It's like 2 a.m. We have to go to bed." But so I'm going to watch the other two again. It was released here in North America by this crummy company that used formerly crummy company that just puts out budget stuff that has iffy copyright. They put out a really nice Blu-ray set that I got for like $5.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, and they have both English and Japanese, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to rewatching the other two.
Okay.
Yeah, eventually watching that TV series, at least giving it a couple episodes, see where it takes me. So then, yeah, we're talking about kids. And so that was 1966. By the time the next movie comes out, 1972, Godzilla himself, we've got Godzilla versus Megalon, came out in 1973. Godzilla versus Gigan is sort of a teen-friendly version. I think Godzilla versus Megalon is actually the first Godzilla movie I ever saw.
Oh, really?
And it has this... Godzilla versus Megalon has the scene where you see on the internet of him riding up on his tail and rocketing. At
like the Godzilla dropkick.
And right now I'm forgetting the name of, was it All Monsters Attack that was the most kid-friendly one? Yeah,
it's the one that's basically where all the kaiju movies are like fantasy sequences of a bullied young boy.
Yeah, and that was a movie that I remember. That was the Friday the 13th Part 5 of... or Halloween Part 3 of the Godzilla series, where all the older fans hated it because it was different. And as the years have gone by, the 40 and under fan group. Like all the guys 50 and up hate it, but all of us 40 and under, which I barely am at this point, have come to kind of like it. I think I like it, but
I like it. I like it too, because it's just so different from everything that came before it, and it's just charming and it's childlike, and it goes all out. It's kiddie pandering, and I'm like, yeah, what the hell? Why not?
Yeah, and so there's a lot of kiddie pandering at this point. I wish I could remember the term shonen. There's shonen.
Yeah, shonen, yeah.
They're aimed at shonen. They're aimed at boys who like comic books and stuff. And so in 1972, a movie called Daigoro versus Goliath, and I'm actually not going to attempt to pronounce the Japanese one because I'm so bad at it. I might actually add a little blip of me pronouncing it correctly after I ask my friend who knows how to speak Japanese. I'm going to see him tonight. I'm going to ask him how to pronounce these. Howdy, y'all. This is Corrections Gabe calling from the future again. My friend James helped me out with the pronunciation, so here I go. The Japanese title is Kaiju, Daifusen, Daigoro, Tai Gorashu. I think I get it right that time. Now enjoy this Japanese language trailer clip.
南海の孤島を舞台に食べることしかできなかった無能怪獣大五郎がおじさんや子供たちの力を借りて恐怖生獣ゴリアスを倒すほど猛烈に強い立派な怪獣に成長します。子供も大人も楽しめる痛快な現代童話円谷プロ10周年記念作品怪獣大奮戦をお楽しみに。
Anyway, the original title is The Monster's Desperate Battle, Daigoro versus Goliath.
Yeah, right.
And this is by another thing I'm going to mispronounce, Suburaya Productions.
Suburaya, yeah.
Who is known for their Ultraman stuff.
And that's Eiji Tsuburaya, right? That's the...
Yeah. I'm very unfamiliar with Ultraman.
I am very unfamiliar with Ultraman too. In fact, I've never seen an Ultraman.
I had thought I had, and it turned out I had seen Jet Jaguar in
Godzilla versus Megalon. Yeah, I mean, ironically, that was Toho's attempt at.
I think I thought it was an actual crossover until very recently.
No, it was a backdoor pilot.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware of it, but what's his name? Hideaki Anno, the Shin Godzilla guy, is going to do a Shin Ultraman.
Oh, is he? No, I did not know that. That's great. That's awesome.
I know. It's going to do a wild reimagining of Ultraman.
That's
I'm like,
great.
I'm down for that. Shin Godzilla was amazing.
Yeah, there is an Ultraman, a newish Ultraman on Netflix. They're really pushing at me every time I turn on my Netflix. It's one of those really loud ads. But I kind of feel like I shouldn't watch the new one without watching at least some of the old ones.
Yeah, and exactly.
This is a studio that was aimed at younger people, and this movie has it was almost impossible to find. In fact, the YouTube version that the two of us, I think you watched the YouTube one too. You said,
yeah.
That bootleg on YouTube is one of the only ways to watch it with subtitles currently.
Oh wow!
I didn't know that at the time, but there's not really an official English language release, and so I was surprised that there was a lot of backstory on this particular one. Which I guess we'll talk about what the movie is itself first, and then I'll talk about this weird backstory. But this is so absurdly cute. The entirety, it is like, I suppose it's about this adorable kind of toddler monster called Daigoro.
Yeah.
Who kind of looks like the Michelin Man and a hippo.
Yeah. Yes. These weird concertina limbs.
Yeah, and he has a big belly and he kind of pouts. There was a Chuck E. Cheese. Do you have Chuck E. Cheese out there? Do you know what Chuck E. Cheese is?
I know what Chuck E. Cheese is from American media.
From American media. Oh, when I was a kid, I was deathly afraid of Chuck E. Cheese. We had one in Tucson, Arizona that was dark as hell, and the animatronic creatures, one of them literally came out of the wall.
Oh no.
And so at certain times of the day, a giant hippo with a piano would come out of the wall and I would just have to leave. I would cry so much. So I have This guy looks a little like that, but sweet. He does not move. And the story is that his mom is this really, honestly, kind of scary. She's got like hair, and having hair on a kaiju is weird to.
Yeah, right. That is rare enough.
So they kill her because she's destroying things, and then they find her baby, who's kind of person size, and the government feel bad, and they decide to let him live, and they allocate a certain amount of funds to keep him isolated and fed. And the original thrust of the plot is that he's too big and it's costing too much government money to feed him, which is the weirdest idea for a movie. And it feels like they were trying to make some sort of political point here to me in this kids movie. I don't quite know what it is. It's something about maybe government funding should be meant for the things it's needed for. It's okay to have frivolous spending if it is improving someone's life. I don't know exactly what it seems like a positive message. But so for the first, I don't know, half of the movie is this issue of trying to feed this giant monster, this hippo monster who's a nice guy. And they're just filling these dog dishes just full of stuff, which is a very silly image to me. But then there's this whole subplot where there's like the absent-minded professor and his, I don't know if they're actually his children or like his child assistants.
I think they call him Uncle, but
Uncle?
They call, it's a Japanese thing to call each other by family terms. Like you call an old person grandfather or like you call a dude brother. But it doesn't mean that he's really your brother or your grandfather. Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's similar.
Maybe
My mom lives in Hawaii, and I hear that when I go visit her, people using uncle and cousin. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So
they're
maybe they're just on speaking terms with this adult whom they call uncle, or he is their uncle. Who knows?
Yeah, they're his wards in some way.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of scenes of either him inventing some ridiculous thing, or them trying to raise money. And then there's another subplot where there's this guy who I guess must have been a Japanese comedian at the time, has he's just this other adult who's hanging out with this old man and his child cadre. So it's like these three different movies, like dopey, googly-eyed, kind of like a lot of the jokes with the comedian guy are sort of sexist.
Yeah, they're all like Jackie Gleason, my wife stuff.
It's like Jackie Gleason, but it's already the 70s, so it was probably even outdated at the time. And then the kid, so there's like a decent kind of Nutty Professor movie going on. I kind of enjoyed that stuff, and none of his stuff works. He has like a flying bike, like the credits play over him trying to make this bike fly. And he has one thing that's like a great invention where he can make a twin of himself that can run really fast. And I'm guessing they just had that special effect hanging around or something. But then there's also, and then like halfway through, another monster called, I guess, Goliath just slams into the planet and starts wreaking havoc. So the kids don't really need to raise money to save Daigoro. I should mention there's a scene where the kids, the professor, and this overweight comic scold a bunch of businessmen for not wanting their taxes to go to Daigoro, which is, it's just super surreal and weird stuff, but it's so heartfelt in what it's doing that it just kind of blew my mind. But so yeah, then a big monster comes and the government decides they not only need to put money into making Daigoro bigger than he is, they're going to, that's another thing. They're going to shrink him. They're putting shrinking drugs in his food.
Which is like treated as such like a dramatic low point.
Yeah.
like his ward is like, no.
I'm going to have to make my baby smaller. I mean,
yeah. it's like there are no ill effects outlined in the movie.
No, he'll just be smaller. He's not going to be in pain.
Exactly.
He won't need to eat as much. Maybe he can come live on land with regular humans.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have to be isolated anymore.
but it's so dramatic.
Yeah.
Like no, like it's there's dramatic music. The guy's being all
He's
super,
literally crying.
Yeah, and like it's almost like we're gonna put Beethoven down, but no, he's just gonna be smaller. He'll eat less tuna and gourds.
Yeah. Maybe that was something that maybe there was an earlier draft where they were going to kill him. So I don't know. Anyway, so that not only that, but then they have to train him to fight because he's a child, and he totally botches his first fight with
Goliath.
Goliath, and it goes on like that. Like
from the moment Goliath is introduced, it's like, oh yeah, I guess this is a kaiju movie. We need a bad guy.
Yeah.
And Goliath is so perfunctory. He literally just shows up. He has no connection. I forget. Does Goliath even have like a random rampage scene? So like,
they keep cutting back to him like breaking things. Like,
okay.
But there's not a lot of it. In Godzilla movies, they'll cut back to him like, oh no, he just destroyed some town that's really close to this very large area. We have a ticking clock. We need to find a way to beat him. And in this case, it's like he broke another thing, but it's okay. There's time to train this boy to fight.
And I love the little directorial flourish in. I don't know why, maybe to remind us of the impending danger that Daigoro was in, but like during the final battle with Goliath, we keep cutting to like a graveyard.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Are they implying that Daigoro's been on this island for a long time and like he left a lot of researchers behind and like died of old age on that very island feeding Daigoro?
I also don't know where the name Goliath comes in. They keep referring to him as the Great Stellar Monster.
They, at one point, at least in the subtitles, like one of the government guys is like, a new monster has landed. I will temporarily refer to it as Goliath.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, there you go.
I always love, one of my favoriteest things about kaiju is like, they name their kaiju for marketing purposes, but like then they have to find some awkward way to get those names in the movies. And I remember in War of the Gargantuas, and like there's like an official like an announcement from the ministry. The Prime Minister has officially declared the monsters to be called Sanda and Daigoro. Okay, thanks, Prime Minister. Good use of your time.
They interrupted the regular broadcast to have him sit behind it. Yeah.
By the way, these red and green giants are called Sanda and Gaira. Okay, thanks, bud.
Yeah, that's a great movie that I'll have to talk about on some other. It's so the actual quality of costumes and fights and special effects are not great, but it remains pretty cute throughout.
Yeah, like I mean, they basically they tell you what they're all about when we first meet Daigoro, and it's like, oh no, he hasn't been eating. He hasn't been eating well. The budget is shrinking, and one of them says, "Yeah, and he hasn't been regular either." And we cut to a giant toilet.
The movie ends on a joke where he uses a giant, basically, outhouse.
Yeah, and he just he comes out of it and he contentedly taps his belly. Oh yeah,
and
that was
his,
a good one.
His surrogate fathers are looking on and with tears of pride.
Yeah.
It also ends with them strapping Goliath to a rocket and shooting him back into space.
Yeah. And when they did that to Gamera in the first Gamera movie too, but at least he was captured in a in a capsule here. They just strap him to the outside of a rocket with like even better with like his horns snapped off.
Yeah.
And the kids are just like laughing and waving like, don't come back.
Yeah. They like sing a song and everything.
And like,
hold on, I got to put you on hold for a second. The cat's doing something. I have to figure out what she's doing. I'll be right
great.
back.
Sure.
I'll be right back. Okay, so the backstory is almost all rumors that Godzilla fans thought that this was supposed to be a movie called Godzilla versus Red Moon.
Okay.
And there's a book called The Big Book of Japanese Giant Monster Movies, The Lost Films by John LeMay.
Right.
And do you have that one?
I do not. Tell me about it.
It's interesting because it's a whole book about movies that weren't made, basically, or movies that were altered after the fact. And so this guy did a lot of research, and it's valuable because, again, a lot of this stuff is in English. So he has a long description of what that actual plot was, and goes on to describe the connections between this movie and that. Is that it was there were two rumors. One that how do you say the studio name? Tsuburaya had proposed using the unused Red Moon costume for Goliath,
right.
Erebus costume for Daigoro, and an infant monster named Haifun, who was going. That was going to be Daigoro or Goliath. I'm sorry. Erebus was going to be adult Daigoro, and that thing was going to be. And there was never any real fact behind that necessarily. And other fans claimed that Daigoro was going to be a reused Son of Godzilla suit, because this was distributed by Toho, but not produced by them.
Right.
So it was a connection there. And then a third theory claimed that the Godzilla vs. Red Moon was canceled and the script was reworked. They back up the claim that there was going to be a collaboration, but Godzilla vs. Red Moon was slated to be released the year after this, which was already planned. So they think that it was just a matter of the Goliath model perhaps inspiring other models used for the studio's own movies. It had nothing to do with it. So, and then the other weird in-joke was Daigoro. The only other thing with Daigoro, he's named after the cub or son of the Lone Wolf and Cub books.
I learned that after watching the movie, because like the Japanese subs are like, we felt bad when the when we killed its mom. We found that it had, there was a baby. So we called it Daigoro, which perhaps was us trying to redeem ourselves. And I was like, I don't know what that means, subtitles.
Yeah.
Why is Daigoro trying to redeem yourself? And then later I was like talking to someone about it. Like, there's a movie called Daigoro vs. Goliath. And one of the persons that was in the conversation was like, was that a reference to Lone Wolf and Cub? And I was like, oh wait, and that's when it clicked, Cub. Oh, yeah. Okay, Cub. Yeah, we called him Cub perhaps to redeem ourselves. So okay, so you think that is an intentional reference?
I'm guessing it's possible because the series, the comic series and the movie series would have been going on around the same time. So, and the word doesn't seem to have other meaning beyond that, unless it's something I just don't know. Dai and Goro might mean something I have not figured out. But yeah, I think it was intentional, but that's just a guess. But yeah, so all that backstory stuff ended up being totally unprovable, and it was based on some random rumors in Japanese-only books.
Right.
So this really was probably conceived... There might have been some point when the studio wanted to save money and was asking Toho if they could reuse things. The Goliath does look a lot like Godzilla with a big horn on his head. It kind of looks like you took Godzilla, put a horn on his head, and then shoved him inside Gamera. So yeah, this is a very silly movie that I was never bored by.
Right.
And, the themes are good. It's about human responsibility in the natural world, and it isn't, there's a kind of man-made disaster in killing Daigoro's mom led to, it has some nice themes and doesn't have the nihilism of some of those really good Godzilla movies. And this is one that I could see being a TV series more than Daimajin, but that's just me.
Yeah, because you have the nutty professor there going.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can have them. What are they gonna come up with this week to get money? And you've got the several different and seemingly wholly disparate subplots.
Yeah. You could have several episodes training Daigoro martial arts. And effects technology could help with that. You could have a mocap Daigoro who could really do some cool stuff.
Get Andy Serkis in to
or I don't remember the name of the guy who plays who's like the number 2 mocap guy. I can never remember his name, but he was Rocket
Toby Kebbell.
Have him do, Oh yeah, he was Kong, wasn't he? I just remember. What? No, he was in Kong.
He was in Kong, but he hilarious enough, he wasn't Kong.
Wasn't Kong.
A chap called Terry Notary was Kong.
Oh, he's another good one.
Oh, that was the first time I heard his name. So he's a mocap guy.
Yeah, I believe he's also, if I'm remembering the name right, and I'm not going to look it up right now, I believe he is also in some of the Planet of the Apes movies. I think that he's the secondary. I can't remember I can't remember all the apes' names.
He's Rocket, apparently.
Oh, he's Rocket. That's right. He's Rocket, and Toby Kebbell is.
He's Koba.
Koba, the mean one.
The mean one with the 2 guns.
Yeah.
To me, Kebbell is mostly known for what's his name, Durotan in Warcraft. He's the main orc in Warcraft. Oh,
is he? Oh, yeah, he is. He is. I remember that now. God, I only saw that movie once. I should rewatch that one. I've never played Warcraft in my life, so I didn't have any real reason to want to see it. But I liked the director, and I think it was one of those movies where I watched it and I just wished it was only about the orcs. I was not into the human story, but I was really into the orc story, and I told friends who play Warcraft, and they said, "Yeah, that sounds about right." That hadn't seen the movie.
I guess that is loyal to the games then.
Yeah.
I guess like years and years ago, but like decades, like used to be that you could like play it a month for free. I that's the only experience I had with it. Like I played the free month, and I never bothered to do
to go beyond that.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, this is a great fun movie with a great message. It's Warcraft is a pro refugee movie, people.
Yeah, well, it's also on that long list of movies that are like big blockbuster movies that clearly needed to be like an hour longer. Or have a sequel. But they're never going to get that sequel, and they're never going to get that director's cut, and it's very sad. Well, so speaking of movies that don't make their money back, in the recent years, so we were talking about the 1998 Godzilla. I think that even though that movie only made a little bit of money and was not well received, somewhere around that time, or maybe even earlier, Jurassic Park, CG catches up, and American Hollywood studios want to make big budget monster movies, and they keep making them, and they keep doing okay at the box office. And it's a very interesting thing to me. So you had the 1998 Godzilla, you had the newer 2 Godzilla movies, neither of which really made much money. Peter Jackson's King Kong was, all these movies that are called flops that aren't flops, but, might as well be flops. Pacific Rim movies.
Yeah, right.
They're trying very hard. And so it's, instead of talking about one of those, we're going to talk about like the definite B movie of this bunch, which is Rampage.
Yay.
Which is definitely a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson movie first. And a kaiju movie like fourth.
It's weird, You like hanging out with animals more than people.
Yeah, well, animals get me. I rescued George when he was 2 years old. George never would have survived on his own.
He definitely trusts you.
Last night, George was 7 feet and he weighed 500 pounds. This morning, he's 9 feet, pushing 1,000. What's happening to my friend?
Are you familiar with genetic editing? Changes will be incredibly unpredictable.
Is he the only one?
Oh, you didn't know about the 30-foot wolf?
Incoming!
The world is a vampire.
Hell of a day, huh? Science experiments falling from the sky.
Having George on that plane is a big mistake.
I think we'll be all right.
Let's go save the world. You have to evacuate Chicago. George didn't ask for this. They're gonna put him down. That's not happening.
Is there something in the river?
I was just thinking the only thing that's missing right now is a giant crocodile.
It's directed by Brad Peyton, who's one of those classic Hollywood nobodies who you realize actually made a lot of pretty big budget movies.
Yeah, he's like I think he's like he's gonna end up being known for like Dwayne's go-to puppet director.
Yeah, yeah, he's I can't remember the guy's name who did Tombstone, but there's the director of the director of Tombstone is a guy who's famous for actors using him as a puppet. I can't remember his name. It doesn't matter. Yeah, basically that's what Brad Peyton does. Is he does The Rock.
Was it Cosmatos?
Yes,
George Cosmatos.
Yeah, he was sort of like he made his own good movies, but he also would just pretend to be a director for Sylvester Stallone and I almost said Kirk Douglas.
Uh-huh.
The other guy, the mustache. Yeah, so Brad Peyton's sort of, what he did when they made a sequel to Journey to the Center of the Earth, and it wasn't really a sequel because it became a rock movie. He did that one. So Rampage is actually based on a very old video game from 1986. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about childhood memories. I was really into Rampage. And it was one of those really cruel video games that everything is timed. Mm-hmm. So you put a quarter in and you have to get a certain amount of things done. So you're a monster that's either going to be, you can be a wolf creature, a Godzilla creature, or a King Kong creature. I don't know why they picked wolf creature, but, and it's up to 3 players. I think there was 3-player versions. And you have to go to a town and break as much shit as you can. And every time you eat a person or something, you get a little bit more time.
Right.
But otherwise, you're timed and you just have to do as much damage as you can. And it's like, it feels like 90 seconds. I don't know how long it actually was. But it was a real quarter chomper. But just the idea of controlling a Godzilla was so appealing to me as a kid. Mm-hmm. And the stupidest thing about me and this movie is that I wish that the movie was more like the game's plot.
It has a plot?
It has a plot. The plot is that there's been, and it does take this, there's some sort of chemical in a lab, but instead of turning animals into larger versions of themselves, so in the movie, there's a big ape who is a normal size ape who gets this chemical on and gets bigger. There's, and the Godzilla creature is basically a giant alligator. Yeah. And the wolf creature is a giant wolf.
Right.
That has bat wings, sort of. In the game, those are all humans.
Okay. That's a Cronenbergian twist.
And so when you die, quote, you just shrink back down to human size and are nude and are covering your. So Lizzie is actually a woman, and the other two are men. And they just are covering their genitals and in 8-bit graphics, and they creep off the screen. And
hilarious.
if you're playing 2-player, you can reach down and eat the person when they turn back into a person to get extra
You're a
time.
real asshole about it.
Yeah, exactly. So when I heard The Rock was making a Rampage movie, I really thought The Rock was going to play
The ape man.
Yes, and I thought that the villain was going to be a lady. And I remember seeing I don't remember who I saw was hired. And I'm like, yeah, she'd make a good giant Godzilla monster.
It was
I don't remember who.
Malin Ackerman.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
And then I saw that oh God, what's his name from Jeffrey Dean Morgan?
Yeah,
I was like, he'd make a great wolf monster. But sure enough, they're animals in this version.
Yeah, right.
The Rock has his rock face the whole time. He's not a giant ape with the Rock's face on its facade.
Like this weird, alienating Cronenbergian.
Yeah.
Put the Rock's face on an ape.
So I don't know. I really kind of wanted that. And then when I found out it wasn't that, I just didn't see the movie. And it just came to me. Paramount sends me Blu-ray reviews because of the old DVD active days. And I don't know, they didn't get the message that I don't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. So I ended up with a copy of it. And so I watched it. And it is not bad at all. Mm-hmm. It's fine. It is a perfectly fine movie that just doesn't have humans turning into giant monsters.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. It's a movie that bothers to make, because I guess we're at a point where that kaiju distinction isn't really a technical necessity anymore. Like, you can have the ape throw around special forces guys. You can have, the hero ride the nice kaiju and stuff like that. That's not that, if a movie is technically proficient enough to put a kaiju on screen, then it is technically proficient enough to have a human interact with it, so yeah. And I think that the movie does, for the brainless adventure that it is, it's well aware of its audience, of what it's supposed to do, and all the humans are big. Nobody's being serious. Everyone is constantly saying saying dumb stuff very enthusiastically. I definitely enjoyed it as well, especially because if you see a lot of kaiju movies, then God love him, but there's definitely at one point you're just happy for some technical proficiency.
Yes.
With, and even if you read old interviews with kaiju directors, they will just straight up say that Toho made me cut this. Toho cut half my budget a week into shooting. These weren't. You can be film snobby about them, but they were money making ventures for the most part, and they were comedically tight ass about production in many cases. So when you have something like Rampage that is good natured and generally technically proficient, that already has a leg up on many kaiju movies.
Yeah, I'm looking it up, and it said it was $120 million budget, which is pretty normal for
nowadays. It's pretty normal. Yeah, exactly.
That's not I don't know what the Godzilla King of the Monsters budget was, but it had to be closer to 200. Mm-hmm. And probably that 20 all went to Dwayne Johnson right off the bat. But yeah, it's not a super interesting story. It's that this government thing spreads and it causes these 3 animals to become giant monsters. And I guess it's a little bit like Godzilla King of the Monsters, where there's a sound that they're they're coming towards.
Yeah.
You know,
that,
come to think of it, didn't I only saw it the one time, but didn't Pacific Rim 2 have a similar thing where the bad guy was trying to purposely bring all of them together in one spot?
Yeah. Charlie Day was infected by the kaiju brain, and yeah.
So is that like the new Skybeam? Is there's monsters and they are all brought to
the sonar?
Yeah.
I guess it is. Let's see if Godzilla versus Kong is gonna have a sonar.
A sonar device of some kind.
Like the tribesmen made a sonar device.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think the first movie takes place in the 70s. So yeah.
So they just they were intrigued by these Americans' technology. So over the years we have built a sonar.
Yeah. And someone kind of under their breath says it looked like O'Shea Jackson Jr. has to make a note about that. Looks a lot like the thing we saw the last time we fought these things. So, but yeah, Rampage is a good like 3-star movie. Like there's really Jeffrey Dean Morgan is really funny in it.
Yeah.
Joe Manganiello, he doesn't get a lot to do, but he's pretty funny.
His scene, or like his sequence, I guess, is one of the most fun ones in the movie. Like it's basically the set piece with which they introduced the Batwolf.
Yeah.
And I was surprised at like that scene really pushed PG-13.
Yes.
Like it was some of it I was like, damn, this looks like, linger on it for like an extra second and it could have been R.
Yeah.
And like some of that shit.
And the
looked
rest
like
of the movie's pretty harmless too.
Yeah.
It's an interesting. Well, it's this the Jurassic Park, the Jurassic World movies tend to have those scenes where it's like all good fun, and then there'll be just one really graphic thing will happen, or one or two really graphic things will happen. I think that's what happens when you make big movies in committee over a series of 3 years with like 50 different effects studios working on. I looked up, this one is Weta did the effects on this one.
Oh, okay. Well,
so they might have had a leftover stuff for all the 8. Their 8 might be so good just because they're updating software they used for the King Kong that Peter Jackson made, which those effects are still pretty good considering that movie is 12 years old, 13 years old now. So yeah, the effects are all outstanding in this movie. They're really convincing. The alligator, crocodile, whatever she is, that scene's really spectacular when she attacks the like sort of climax of the movie, I guess. It's well done for what it is, and it's entertaining. It doesn't have. I think a lot of these newer kaiju movies have really high ambitions, and I always enjoy them. Like I don't know if there's a single one I haven't liked, but none of them quite hit what they're aiming for, I think. And so it's kind of fun to watch one that wasn't really trying for anything more than than
good time.
Three monsters and The Rock and a couple character actors.
Apparently George the ape, like the main gorilla in Rampage, would sacrifice himself and would die at the end in the original draft, and like Dwayne actually said that like, nope,
we're not doing that.
That's not my brand. People don't want to walk out of a Dwayne Johnson movie sad. And I think that kind of perfectly encapsulates what the movie is aiming for.
Right.
Hey, no. That is too much depth of emotion. That is not what we want. You want to like, hey, that was a good time. Yeah, let's go out for French fries. I think Rampage is kind of like the absolute baseline of what we should expect of Hollywood, like sort of, dummy blockbuster movies.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with it, right?
Yeah.
And I was about to go I'm like, oh wow, this is actually, underrated or whatever. But then I realized it's not underrated. Like maybe by internet film people or whatever. But I'm sure
Right.
if you showed regular people this movie, if this was the type of movie that they enjoyed, they'd be like, oh yeah, that was fun. Yeah, yeah.
Good time.
And that's exactly what it's aiming for. And
Yeah.
So I readjusted my notes like, oh wow, this maybe is underrated. To this is like this is this competence and general sense of fun and positivity should be the absolute baseline that we expect when we plonk down our $10 or whatever. So yeah, I think Rampage is I feel like Rampage would have been like, I think any like Toho journeyman director in 1972 would have been very happy to deliver something like Rampage. Like, oh my god, they gave me enough budget to have a shot where the human hero hangs on to the main monster, and I can just do that. Wow,
Yeah, probably like a $2 million budget based on the old Japanese. I don't know what the budgets were back then. They were probably in the hundreds of thousands at the top. And
like you get a All Monsters Attack that's going to be like $20,000.
Yeah. And so I think that this one, and I really wanted to like Pacific Rim 2 more than I did. I think that it was another one of those movies that kind of feels like two movies. Mm-hmm. And I like the first movie a little bit more because it was actually a good kids movie I thought like a good kid teen movie. And then the second half was also a decent movie, but it was like a different movie. And also has Scott Eastwood in it. And I can't abide by Scott Eastwood.
I have the opposite feeling. I think that of the most, of the recent spate of kaiju Hollywood movies, mm-hmm. Pacific Rim is the one like, oh yeah, sure. You can't dislike it because it's obviously that, Guillermo makes it with so much love and passion. But I feel that it's a very compromised movie. Like he has...
Yeah, exactly.
There's 2 has a lot more. Oh, throw everything at the screen and see what sticks. There's the Black Racer mystery robot. There's a bunch of kaiju. There's the evil Charlie Day, and it's like, oh my god. Whereas it's I always felt that the first Pacific Rim was like I felt like coming out of it, I was like, if I had seen the Hong Kong sequence as a short movie, I would have gotten exactly the same out of it as I did.
Yeah. Well, and I think the same thing can be said for the first Godzilla movie, 2015, whatever year that was.
14.
14. I think both those movies are really ambitious, and that there's just you can feel that they didn't quite get to what they wanted to get. There's just. Mm-hmm. They're just not quite there, but I really like both of them a lot. Mm. And I felt like Rampage and Pacific Rim are more movies that knew what they wanted and got through to the end with what they wanted. Right. And so I respect them for the entirety of their production, whereas Pacific Rim and I guess both Godzilla movies, which are those 3 movies I actually like better overall, but are much easier to pick apart and
wait, which ones
about.
Are you?
I actually really like Pacific Rim and the 2 new Godzilla movies.
Right, okay.
I think those are like, of these new, I like those ones more than I like Pacific Rim Uprising and Rampage, but I think Pacific Rim Uprising and Rampage they're a better representation of maybe what studios are going to want to do with this kind of stuff in the future. I guess to a certain the King Kong movie too. The King Kong movie, to me, was a little bit too much Apocalypse Now, but with monsters. Mm-hmm. I have a weird aversion to this old movie, but with this other thing.
Okay, yeah.
That's why I'm not going to probably see the Joker movie. It has nothing to do with social message or anything. It's just I'm kind of annoyed by the idea.
Taxi driver, but with the Joker.
Yeah, I just am annoyed with the concept, so I'm probably just not going to see it.
Yeah, I can see problem. That. I enjoyed the I guess the new MonsterVerse has only had 3 movies, which is wild because they've been going at it since 2014. You know, we're so used to
Yeah.
Marvel just plonking out 3 movies a year.
Yeah.
What I liked about in Skull Island and King of the Monsters is that like Skull Island like very just unapologetically like makes Americans the bad guys.
Yes.
And
yes.
like you see that whole tour of duty like montage where like light them up and like they just start
Yeah.
burning the island and just laughing and they're just pieces of shit and
Yeah.
they like besides our small group of heroes they all basically deserve to die and
Yeah.
and I was like, oh my god, that's pretty bold to do in such an expensive movie,
Yeah.
so I like that, and King of the Monsters also had like that whole philosophy of like maybe we should turn the Earth over to the kaiju again.
Yeah.
They're obviously better at it than we are, and like and that's how it ends. It's like, oh wow, yeah, the kaiju are back, and they have the world is better now with them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like the little bit of like maybe we shouldn't like purposely make them kill everything. Like I guess the only real in that in King of the Monsters the monkey wrench is that Gahidra is an unnatural element, and that if Gahidra is not there, then the natural order is a good thing. That's the way that they have any sort of conflict. Otherwise, the movie would just be, yeah, no, let him go. It's cool.
Exactly. Like he's like he's the outside element that kind of fucks with everyone's brain waves.
Right.
And
right.
I find it funny that like besides that miscalculation that Ghidorah is a like, oh yeah, he's the biggest monster, so let's awaken that one, and we'll have the monsters roaming free, and that should take care of the Earth. But like, if you just like focused on Godzilla, that plan would have gone off without a hitch.
Yeah.
just like put their money on. They bet on the wrong monster.
They released him way too early too. Like, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's something I've heard people pick apart. They're like, what was the plan in the first place? But that kind of criticism doesn't really interest me. I think the problem with both King of the Monsters and Skull Island is that the wrong character is the protagonist. Especially in King of the Monsters case. I hated that character, and I liked all the other characters a lot more.
I think it's a matter of screen time, because if we had just followed Millie Bobby Brown around and it was generally the same movie, because like script wise, like he does kind of morally fall on his face, because Vera Farmiga is the one who is correct at the end. Like all his fist waving and like, no, you're crazy, why are you doing this, is just turns out to be wrong. But for some reason we're still following him around, so that is kind of the Achilles heel of an otherwise very enjoyable movie.
Yeah. Yep.
And Skull Island has Tom Hiddleston, who literally has no arc.
No.
He just shows up, it's like, yeah, we need a tracker, and you're real good. And he's like, okay.
and I like Tom Hiddleston, but not. It just didn't work. It doesn't work.
Like he needed to have some trauma to like like maybe he did some bad shit in the Nam or something, and maybe like saving Kong was his redemption arc or whatever. But like no, he's just like a guy who tracked good. Then they bring him to the island, and he tracked good.
Yep.
And that's it.
And I mean, I guess as far as the recent Cloverfield's another one that I think is a great horror movie, but not a particularly interesting character study. Colossal's good, but it's not much of a kaiju movie. I'm just looking at a list now at this point. Did you ever see Dragon Wars? That's a silly movie.
No, it was like what 2003, 4 Korean movie.
It took it
something
forever to come out. It was 2007 as its actual release
Oh my
date.
god!
I was following that thing forever because they had a long trailer back in like 2003.
Right.
I actually saw it in theaters, in an almost empty theater. It is a bizarre amalgamation of really good special effects and cultural barriers between the director and the cast. But, you know, I don't know. I end up liking most of these movies, I think. I liked the Attack on Titan movies that everybody hated.
I never saw them. I've only seen, because, like, when, back before we had Netflix in Belgium,
Yeah.
I had I paid for a VPN proxy that allowed me to get an American account, and I was able to see the first season of Attack on Titan. And I never saw past that, and I actually think that Attack on Titan is a very good kaiju series. Like, it's not they're kind of small, I guess. Most of the most of them aren't really Godzilla size, but like, yeah, that whole desperation, that, like, oh my God, we are so out of our league with these things, you know, that and there's a great sense of, like, impending doom in Attack on Titan, like, almost all the time. Like, I'm legit impressed by how they keep up that pace, that tension, that atmosphere. And because, I mean, maybe it goes to shit after the first season, but
I've seen the whole thing, and I can tell you that in the middle it gets so tied up in politics that it actually became, and I'm not the smartest guy, and when I'm watching stuff with subtitles, I have a tendency to look away from the subtitles to watch the screen. So I did get a little lost in the middle of this. I think it's season 3 now or whatever. I got a little lost in the middle, but and the reveal that I'm sure you've read about on the internet is pretty awful.
God, that is one of those, like, all-timer like creator hang-ups that they put in their work, like oh my God, that is like, you know, Shane Black putting his ex-wife in every movie.
Yes.
Whoa.
And I think I have not read the manga, but I think the anime softens the blow a little bit. I think the anime. I'm just gonna spoiler alert. It turns out that the Titans are basically this universe's Jews, and that the World War II never really ended, sort of, and that there are still internment camps. And when people are insurgents or whatever, they take them and they pump them full of something, and they become these. The more you know about it, the more insulting it is, because a lot of the Titans kind of look like they're deformed in weird ways, and they look dim. They look really dim.
Yes.
Like they run weird. And so there's definitely some anti-Semitism, but the series kind of tries to make it a little more like, no, that's not their fault. I don't know if the comic does that, but it's weird.
I actually think that dim look the Titans have actually makes them more scary.
Oh, they're super scary, and that's why it's a little sad that it turns out it's a little bit insulting.
Yeah.
If they're just this thing that nature made.
Yeah.
That is, and that's the value of the live action movies. At least the first one, they have a totally different ending because the series wasn't finished at the time.
Yeah. Okay. So the live action movies are a complete story.
Yes.
Okay.
That is unrelated and less interesting, but they do a mix of live action and CG. So the Titans are actually people in costumes.
Okay.
And it's really unsettling. So I would recommend it based on just the visuals. I honestly can't remember what happens for the most part in the second one because it's so much plot. But the first one has some really cool visuals.
Right.
And it is genuinely frightening, I think. Because they're zombies, but they're also giant, and they're also, instead of rotting, they're like disturbed looking. Like, I don't know how else to put it. They're weak. They're off-putting in a way that makes you uncomfortable for thinking it's off-putting almost.
Yeah. They look almost, and this is not really better than them being Jews, but they look like disabled people.
Yeah, they do. They look like they have Down syndrome.
And like different types of disabilities, and like one might have a stubby little arm or something. And or they have these dim looks. Sometimes there's like a smiler in the bunch, and that one's extra scary.
Yeah.
The one that kills Aaron's mom is a smiler, I think.
Yes, and that happens in the live action movie, and they do a pretty good job of reenacting that
Right.
smiling. And it's like too wide, and it's like a makeup appliance or something.
Well done. Well done.
I believe it was made by the person who did the co-direction on Shin Godzilla.
Okay.
I think he was chosen because he knew he was good at mixing, because Shin Godzilla is CG made to look like a guy in a suit, basically, from what I understand. That's the best of all these movies that have come out recently, but it's not American. We were talking about the American ones. The Shin Godzilla is an incredible movie, and I heard that they're making a sequel eventually, and I hope it does happen.
Oh, that'd be cool, because it definitely ends on a very intriguing note.
Yeah. I guess I'm happy that I haven't listened to you. Monster Island Commentaries just did a Neon Genesis episode that I haven't listened to yet. And I know that Luana is not a huge fan of the series, but I found her remarks on it on Facebook and Twitter very intriguing. But as someone who liked that series, but also got a little sick of it, I quite enjoyed the movie rebuilds that they did. That were a little bit more sci-fi action. They were a little less heavy. But then they started to get into that weird territory that is similar to the way that Shin Godzilla ends, where there's sort of a sort of apocalyptic idea that's also sort of a horror thing. So I'm happy that he's still out there making stuff, and that he is going to be allowed to make another Godzilla movie, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, because after seeing Evangelion and because I'd seen Shin Godzilla first, I was like, wow, I wasn't the biggest fan of Evangelion, but Shin Godzilla was amazing. So I'm I would definitely stick around to see what else this guy has up his sleeve.
Yeah. So I guess I'm trying to think if I have any other recommendations of people, because I don't know when the next time I'll do a kaiju episode. I'm definitely going to do another one at some point. Hopefully, this went well enough that Luana will want to do another one in the future.
Oh yeah, because this is a good time for me. If it remains a good time for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like since I work from home, this is like just after lunchtime for me. So, so I guess we can sign off here, unless you had something else you wanted to say about Rampage.
You check it out, and you'll definitely have a decently fun time.
Yeah, you'll have a not terrible time, and you'll what's the everybody says beer and pizza movies.
Yeah,
it would definitely be good at a sleepover.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
I mean,
sleepover.
what more do movies with fucking big monsters need to be?
Exactly. As per usual, I made a letterbox list that I'm going to link on here that is just all the non-Godzilla related and also no King Kong movies that I could possibly find.
Right.
But I did include some iffy stuff like Them, and which is the giant ant movie, and the Deadly Mantis. I included those things. I don't know. I think those might be eco horror, which is a different subject, but kind of similar. Also, dinosaur movies are kind of their own thing too. I don't know. That's part of the fun of this, is figuring out what's what. So what do you guys have coming up next on your?
It's we've got the Cue the Winged Serpent, of course. It's gonna be our Halloween episode. We've got King of the Monsters coming up, actually, and we have Destroy All Planets.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
It's fully on YouTube as well. I've yet to watch it as well, so I try to definitely at least have seen it once before we do a commentary. So
Right.
I'm not early seasons of MST3K style just improvising. I like to have some clue of what to say before I say it. I actually my wife Ella and I started watching MST3K this year. Like we started.
Oh, okay.
We started that it had never been aired here, like ever, and I had only ever heard of it through references from American friends and through general American pop culture, and that's very funny. We quite like it.
It was actually shot. The early seasons were shot in a warehouse about a block away from where Christine works.
Oh, that's delightful.
I didn't know that until I moved here, but yeah, I had to be told it was just over. So it's not very far from we are. I know it's not shot there anymore, but yeah, it has a Minnesota connection.
Yeah, and I know that it's very Midwestern.
Yes, it is. To the point where people who didn't grow up in the Midwest laugh at certain things that they probably didn't intend to be funny.
Okay.
Kind of the whole Fargo thing where you move here and everybody's like, we don't talk like that. And you're like, yeah, you kind of do. You just can't hear it. All right. So you can reach me at Gabe M Powers on Twitter, or on the Genre Grinder Gmail, which is genregrinder@gmail.com, or visit us at the website genregrinder.com. Where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Servant of Dagon, which was a pre-transition Twitter handle, but luckily it was gender neutral. And
oh yeah, it is. That's true.
We hung out at Chud together. I was Servant of Dagon there too, if you'll remember.
Yeah, I do.
I was we have, of course, the Monster Island Commentaries has its own Twitter handle at MI Commentaries. You can also find us on Patreon, obviously, at Monster Island Commentaries. monstercommentary.libsyn.com is where we're at, and we're also on the Apple Store. We're on Stitcher, and we're on we have a Gmail, micommentaries@gmail.com. And of course we have a Facebook page. Just look for Monster Island Commentaries and give us a like if you're so inclined.
Oh, that's right. I have a Facebook page too. I keep forgetting about that.
Well, do tell, Gabe.
I have a Facebook page too. John Grinder, Facebook, something. All right, awesome. I'm gonna play us out with the opening title theme song from Daigoro versus Goliath, which has a bouncing ball sing-along, which obviously you won't see because this is audio, but you can just picture it. And just go watch it on YouTube, and like I said, it's free.
You should.
風のうなりにふと目を覚まし不吉な夜の流れ星腹をすかした大五郎いつか戦う時